Thanks for joining us for a conversation about rural organizing and its intersections with the energy sector, specifically the electric utilities that serve America's rural landscapes and are owned by the consumers they serve. We're joined here today by two colleagues who have been accomplished in their work as organizers in rural communities, engaging these democratically governed utilities called electric cooperatives. Benita Wells with Southern Echo and Bree Nisley from Appalachian Voices. For the benefit of our friends reading and watching content on the Forge for the Center for Popular Democracy, I'm going to welcome Benita and Bree to introduce themselves and the work that they're motivated to do on behalf and in cooperation with the member owners of electric cooperatives in the areas they work.
Hey everyone, my name is Benita Wells. I am the Chief Financial Officer for Southern Echo. I live in Jackson, Mississippi. We have 26 electric cooperatives in the state of Mississippi. Southern Echo, we work with 11 of them, 11 out of the 26. I have been driven to this work. It is a passion project of mine. My family from Macomb, Mississippi, and my entire family on my father's side are all member owners and have been, including my grandfather, who did not know he was a member owner before he passed away. And I'm going to pass it on to Bree.
Thanks, Benita. Hey, y'all. My name's Bree Nisley. I am a campaign coordinator for Appalachian Voices, and I'm based out of Knoxville, Tennessee. We also, we do co-op work really across 3 states. In Tennessee, we have something like 22 electric co-ops. I think there's 26 in North Carolina and 13 in Virginia. And in Tennessee, something like 70% of our state is served by electric co-ops, 2.5 million homes and businesses. And that's typically pretty similar for most states in the US. Most of them are served by electric co-ops. We do democratization work directly with member owners. We also work at the policy level, trying to advance policy that influences electric co-ops. There's a lot of reasons to be doing this work. On a personal level, the reason I'm excited about it is because it provides an opportunity for us to do rural organizing in a way that advances really progressive values. We're talking about participatory democracy. We're talking about better representation in rural areas. And we're also talking about community control over resources, which are really important things that we need to be working on in today's day and age.
My name is Holmes Hummel. I'm the founder of Clean Energy Works and the former senior policy advisor in the Department of Energy, where I first came to know more about the underpinnings of electric cooperatives because my family has been a member owner of an electric cooperative since electricity was brought to the countrysides of Yadkin County in North Carolina. So the electric cooperative that I'm a member owner in is right in central North Carolina. So let's look at a map of the United States showing the expanse of the electric cooperatives, 3/4 of the continent of the United States covered by these electric utilities owned by the consumers they serve. Benita and Bree, tell us, how did these electric cooperatives form? And how are the communities that you know best organizing to engage their leadership now?
Thank you, Holmes. Well, as you can see on the screen here, electric co-ops were absolutely a New Deal project, and they were really founded to improve quality of life in rural areas. Around the late 1890s, most cities in the US had been electrified, but rural areas had not because it wasn't profitable for private companies. So I think the Rural Electrification Act was signed somewhere around 1936. And from the late 1930s to the early 1950s, most of the land area that did not have electricity at that point when the REA Act was signed had electricity, after less than 2 decades. And so rural communities came together. There was a lot of organizing that happened largely through the farmers co-ops at the time. But yeah, lots of organizing happened. Communities came together. Members of the communities put forth their initial membership fee, which was like a couple bucks at the time, I think, and ran electric line faster than any private company was ever able to do. And this project was really about improving quality of life in rural areas and making sure that rural areas weren't left behind or that there wasn't a technological divide. And I think what's important to note is that electric co-ops can and should still be about this very thing today. There are a lot of issues in rural communities that electric co-ops can address and address well through programs and through involving members in their decision making. So I'll pass it to Benita to talk more about that.
Yes, thank you, Bree. Electric cooperatives are vehicles of economic development in the communities that they serve. And so when they are not living up to that role, that duty, it negatively impacts the community. You know, we see that the infrastructure is affected. New businesses are not coming in. The young adults, you know, like a lot of people like to talk about the millennials, they're moving out, they're moving to other states. So it's really sad, but how we're trying to engage them now, we start with educating the member owners. You know, the fact that they are member owners, the fact that you do have to hold your board accountable. You know, once they're educated, they know that they have to engage more. So, you know, you have to attend the annual meeting. You need to be well versed to understand who your candidates are for running for the board. So there is an election every year. In Mississippi, it's usually 3 seats up. It's a staggered election, usually 3 seats up every year with a standard 3-year term. So it's very important to make sure that you are, just like we look at the presidential campaign, right? It's important to know who's running for your board, what is their platform, what are they going to do for your community, and to understand that you have a voice and you have a vote. It is one person, one vote, and you should exercise that. So it's very important that that happens, because without that, there can be no change in these communities at all. And it starts with the member owners.
Thanks, Benita. And yeah, I'll just add, like, the way that we're engaging with member owners around their co-ops is, you know, we've worked with member owners who are trying to get elected to these boards to do some of the things that Benita's talking about. We've been working with member owners who are trying to address overcompensation for their board members, where a board member who has a couple meetings a month gets paid 50 grand, where the median income is around $20,000. We got folks working on that. We know member owners who have been trying to get programs for solar, for energy efficiency in place at their co-op. And then the most recent issue that's been really big with the member owners that we work with is around broadband. Electric co-ops have the opportunity to provide broadband internet to rural areas in places where there isn't any internet access at all. And so that's been a really big issue that we've been working around recently.
Thank you for lifting that up, Bree, because, you know, even with Southern Echo, we are working on campaigns for individuals who do want to run for the board, but it is community centered. So the community is the one who comes together and picks their candidate, and that's the person that they will put their support behind. So that's very important. But when you talk about even the pay for the board, when we look at the management structure and who the electric cooperatives hire, a lot of the times it is not a people of color. It's not for people of color to be hired. A lot of them are hiring, you know, family friends, and they don't look like the communities that they serve. And the pay is so exorbitant, right? So we can look at a county, for example, like Lee County in Mississippi, where the average income is around $25,000, and we may have a office manager making $180,000. There is nothing that is equitable about that at all. So not only are you charging these high rates for electricity, right? And the member owners, the residential member owners, are subsidizing for, especially Mississippi, the agriculture industry in Mississippi. It's just overall, it's not fair to the member owners. I get frustrated when I talk about these type of things, because I know the benefit that the electric cooperatives could have and could offer to the communities if they just lived up to why they were formed.
Thanks, Benita. I think you teed it up pretty well. Again, there's something like 61 co-ops that cover the 3 states that we work with or work in at Appalachian Voices, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia. Most of the land mass is covered. If you're in a rural area, most likely you are served by a rural electric cooperative, unless you're in a small town that has a municipal utility. And as Benita was saying, yeah, I mean, many of our persistent poverty counties in Tennessee, North Carolina are served by rural electric cooperatives. So relatively speaking, these co-ops reach a large part of the US and a lot of people.
Let's look at that map. The one that shows the coincidence of electric cooperatives and counties recognized by the federal government for persistence in poverty, which means having more than 1/5 of the community members experiencing poverty at a level recognized by the federal government every year for a generation, ultimately affecting upward mobility and the capacity to capitalize and improve building stock, which is directly related to the quality of the buildings and the houses that people reside in, which itself is directly related to whether or not it's energy efficient or energy inefficient, which can drive up the cost of electricity and put more burden on households that need electricity to stave off shivering in the winter, sweltering in the summer. I see the eastern part of Kentucky and northeastern Tennessee as a cluster area for southern Appalachia and the obvious imprint of the Black Belt across the South. Do either of you have something you want to say about this map before we show the next?
Don't have anything to add other than, yep, looks right to me.
Yeah, but just want to lift up the point, Holmes, that you brought about when you talk about the energy burden that a lot of these communities deal with. It is not just specific to Mississippi or Kentucky or anything like that. When you look at the rural parts of these states of the nation, they're dealing with high energy costs, but they're having to give up other things in order to pay their energy bills, right? They're giving up medications. We're giving up education. They're giving up so many different things. And so when you go around and you have listening tours and you talk to community members across the states, not even just Mississippi, you hear the stories of, I have to give up getting my insulin in order to pay for my electricity bill, which is why this work is so important. It's very important.
Good points, Benita. Yeah, I'll add, yeah. So the Southeast, we have a higher energy burden. A lot of that has to do with aging housing stock. Some of it might have to do with the fact that our temperatures are getting higher because of climate change. And yeah, it's definitely higher in rural areas, energy burden is, and that's the areas that are served by electric co-ops.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, there are also the areas that also, the most majority of the time, are on fixed incomes. I know in Mississippi, they are senior citizens on fixed incomes. They cannot afford these $700, $800 electricity bills that they're receiving on a monthly basis. And it's unfortunate because that's not why they were created.
We've certainly seen statistics that show a large number of households are struggling even more mightily in the conditions of our current pandemic and the associated recession, with 50 million or more claims on unemployment. And I know the intensity with which both of your organizations and all of your allies are involved in rural co-op organizing is showing the imprint of this moment. One of the challenges that we at Clean Energy Works have seen and heard about from communities where residents have a right to vote and want to be involved in governance is that sometimes they are engaged in a conversation with a governing board that hasn't been as responsive to the community members, in part because the electoral process hasn't engaged them vigorously over time. Let's see the next picture. It's a cover page from a magazine that ran the story that you see here now 3 or 4 years ago. Tell us how this intersects with the work that you're doing with member owners who are seeking to participate in the governance or to even just engage those who are already holding governing seats of their local electric utility.
I guess I'll speak first. When you're looking at Mississippi, especially when you're looking at the service areas and the rural parts of Mississippi, you will see that you will have a board that is not representative of the service area that it provides electricity to. So you'll have a board of all white men in a county or service area that is majority African American. And so not represent necessarily the interests of the community. Yeah, and Bree, I'm going to tag you in on that one now.
Yeah, Benita, you should share though what y'all and you just in your past with different organizations have been doing around trying to make these boards more diverse.
Yeah, so democratizing the boards of electric cooperatives is something that is very important. That's where we start. We start with educating the community first, because what you'll realize is a lot of them do not realize that they are member owners. We start there first. And then we start going to the board, because the member owners have to hold the board members accountable, right? Because in Mississippi, there is little governance when it comes to electric cooperatives. The Public Service Commission, for the most part, can only approve service areas. They don't approve rate changes like they would do for the investor-owned utilities. They only approve the service areas. So we're dealing with, you know, boards that they are lining their pockets, unfortunately, you know, and they're not for-profit corporations. They are 501c12s, a form of a nonprofit. They should be working in the best interest of the community to provide electricity at cost or at low cost. And that is the exact opposite. We see them presenting opportunities to, so for example, I will give an example of electric cooperative in Mississippi. I won't say the name, but they invested the funds from the member owners to purchase a golf course that the African Americans were not allowed to become members of, which is outrageous, right? They also are one of the biggest contributors to the governor races here, which majority of the time they're supporting the Republican candidates. But the interesting thing about that is that the member owners don't realize that their funds are going to, you know, to fund these elections, these campaigns. So when they're seeing these ads on TV or hearing the radio ads, they don't realize it's their money that they're using to fund this with. And when you're, unfortunately, when you're serving, you know, majority African American communities, and they're voting one way, and the electric cooperatives are voting another candidate that the member owners do not necessarily support or feel like is in their best interest, it's truly unfortunate to see that.
Yeah, and I'll dig in a little bit further to what Benita's talking about here, which is that electric co-ops are largely unregulated. They're not typically regulated by public service commissions in the same way that municipal utilities are. They're supposed to be regulated by their members, but often what we see is that just isn't happening. Now, that's not all the time. There are some co-ops across the US that are doing a lot for their member owners. We've got examples of like Roanoke Electric Cooperative in North Carolina, where they have implemented a lot of programs that significantly improve quality of life for member owners. Pay-as-you-save programs so that member owners can get weatherization. They also have a broadband program. They have a community center called the Roanoke Center, where they're running a program to teach African-American landowners about forestry and sustainability with their land to improve land retention. So it's, you know, this isn't just, you know, a regular utility that you don't think about, you just pay your bill. Electric cooperatives hold immense opportunity for members of community to influence how resources are implemented in a really important way and significantly improve quality of life. Like, that's the potential that we're talking about, but that isn't going to happen if the co-op board is not representative of their members. And, you know, this article we're looking at here, you know, they're saying 95% of rural electric co-op boards in the Southeast are white and 90% are men. That does not reflect the population here. And if we want co-op boards to be able to better address the issues of communities, they have to be representative. We have, you know, supported member owner groups here that have been organizing at their co-ops. One group in particular ran a board campaign a couple of years ago. They were met with fierce opposition from the incumbents because the incumbents had been on the board for decades, some of them more than 30 years. And that's not an atypical story. You run into that at a lot of electric co-ops. But yeah, just can't stress enough the immense importance of trying to get these boards more representative. And there are a number of organizations in the Southeast that are working on this. We also meet frequently in coalition, but I'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Well, how about now? I think the next image on the screen is a portal online that many of the organizations that have asked Clean Energy Works for support primarily around financing. Clean Energy Works is an organization that focuses on mobilizing investment to generate economic benefits for local communities, including those who are member owners of electric cooperatives. And generating economic benefits for member owners is one of the 7 principles upon which electric cooperatives are founded. Another one of those principles is democratic member control. And so we're familiar with communities that are exercising their democratic member control in order to draw more investment to upgrades in their community, including upgrades to the homes of their member owners. And this particular web shot is from electriccooporganizing.org. I know that URL because organizations that have collected material from lots of different campaign and outreach experiences started to form a fabric of mutual aid to share what they've learned. And Bree and Benita, I know you've both been contributors to the knowledge that's here. How would you suggest rural organizers that are familiar with the Center for Popular Democracy and the Forge magazine reach out to you or to other networks that you help lead in order to gain access to these resources or become involved?
Yeah, thanks, Holmes. Well, I think first I'd like to start by, if you're watching this and you are in the Southeast and you're a member owner or just an activist, an organizer, maybe you're with an organization and you want to start getting involved in organizing at the electric cooperatives in your area, please reach out to our Southeast network, which is Advancing Equity and Opportunity. Benita and I are both the co-chairs of that network. It's pretty self-organized. It wouldn't exist if the people didn't want it to exist. It gets participation from organizations and member owners, which makes it a really cool space. And we meet monthly and work on projects and strategize together. And you can contact myself or Benita. Maybe we could put our email address with this if you want to get in touch. If you are not from the Southeast and you still want to get involved in electric co-op organizing, there's also a coalition called New Economy Coalition, as you can see at the top of the screen here. They are a national network that also has a task force or an issue group that works on electric cooperative issues. And they helped to pull together this really awesome toolkit that has resources from organizations across the country that have been working on electric co-op democratization and getting programs implemented, expanding energy efficiency and renewables. There's all kinds of stuff in here.
Yeah, and this toolkit is really important because you don't have to start from the beginning. There are people who have been working, doing this work for years, decades even. And so it's a very powerful resource to have. There's, even for me, even though I've been doing this for a while, it's still really good to have a resource, and even just a collaborative itself, to say, hey, I'm having an issue. This is the issue I'm coming up against. And everyone in every state is at a different place. Everyone in Mississippi, we're kind of at the beginning of this conversation. We're at the beginning of trying to democratize the boards, but that's not the truth for every electric cooperative and for every state. Every place is in a different, every electric cooperative is in a different place. So it's really great to kind of have a shared space where you can come together, share best practices, share some things that work, share some things that didn't work with one another, and just to ask questions, because sometimes you're just bumping your head against the wall. But the work is so important that this really helps you to advance it. So yes, thank you, Bree, for uplifting all of that. Yes.
Well, I think that's it for the visual aids for now. And we're going to wrap up to say farewell to the audience that's decided to join us to learn more about the intersection between rural organizing, the energy sector, democratic participation, and economic justice. At the center and the cross-section between them, we also see, particularly in the American South, the intersection with racial justice, concerns and considerations around representation, and access to economic opportunity. I think at last tally, there were more than 10 million residents in the American South that have voting rights in these energy companies that are privately organized as electric cooperatives and hold annual meetings for their elections. I'm going to give the last word to each of you about how you want to connect with other people who are all-stars in rural organizing themselves or hail from rural communities and have insights and expertise from their own place-based perspectives.
I'm excited because I want to learn from other people. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing this work. There's always room for learning, and there's always room for growth. So I'm very excited about the prospect of having additional people to learn from and to learn with and to work with in doing this work. It's very important. It's very important work, and like I said, it's a passion project of mine. I will always do this work, no matter what organization I'm with, no matter how old I am. This will always be something that I want to do. So I'm going to always be trying to expand my knowledge base, and to form those relationships in order to get the work done.
Thanks, Benita. Yeah, she always says it really well, so I don't have a whole lot to add other than, you know, Benita's right. Like, we all learn from each other. I'm from a rural community myself. I grew up in a town of like 1,000 people that my family's lived in for 5 generations. Benita's right. All rural places are different. We have things to learn. But I think one of the important things about this work for me and a lot of the member owners and groups that participate is that, you know, we're coming together in solidarity and we're building power together, you know, and it really helps if you are doing this work out on your own. You might feel isolated. To have a network of organizations and just people like organizers, activists that are working on this is just really, really important for moving forward. So reach out to us.
Yes.
Thank you both so much for joining this interview. We welcome all viewers with an interest to be in touch. We'll make sure that the contact information for the lead organizers here is available. Thank you again.